Hello, everybody. I'm going to take a moment to go through the questions from this World History Praxis Practice test. And I just want to say, if you have not taken this Praxis test, please go back and take it before you watch the rest of this Loom video. So for each question, I'm going to go through and remind you what the correct answer should have been and tell you why the other ones were not correct. So for this first question, according to Confucianism, an ideal society, the correct answer would be this: based on respect for authority and wisdom, making harmonious interaction a priority. Confucius really taught others to respect authority and encouraged group harmony. That being said, it can't be the second one because Confucianism does not encourage the questioning of authority because that would risk harmonious interaction. Confucianism did not focus on cultural diversity, so it can't be this one. And it did not feature a caste system, so it can't be the third one. Let's go on to the second question here. During the Pax Romana, the Mediterranean region was all of the following except it was not under control of a powerful state. So this would be the correct answer. It can't be this first one because the Roman Empire controlled the Mediterranean area and much of the land bordering it. It can't be this one because this is true. Rome was enormously commercially powerful during the Pax Romana. So this is a true statement. And this is true. It was ruled by Augustus Caesar during this time period. So this is the only one that was not true. It was not under the control of a powerful Senate. Moving on to this third one. In feudal Europe, serfs were which of the following? Well, the correct answer here is bonded to the land but protected by the lords. It can't be this one because serfs were limited in their freedom, but they weren't slaves that could be bought or sold. So they weren't enslaved necessarily. This one is incorrect because the serfs did not fight. And this one's incorrect because the serfs could not purchase individual freedom by fighting for their lords. So this one is the best example of a serf, bonded to the land, but under the protection of the lords that they served. The next question is about the Crusades. And this question says, while the Crusades enriched Europe in many ways, they did not do which of the following? So the answer here is their efforts did not result in lasting land gains. The European powers controlled some areas, but only temporarily. So that means the following ones here were true. They did bring new knowledge to the West. They did provide religious indulgences for crusaders, and they did offer the opportunity to gain personal wealth. They were amassing personal wealth through plundering, taking what they wanted during those fights. So that's why lasting land gains would be the correct answer there, because they did not have that during the Crusades. The Kingdom of Mali developed due to which of the following? The answer here would be they had control over gold and salt resources. This was a major trade for the Kingdom of Mali. They became very wealthy and because these were considered to be very valuable natural resources. This first one is incorrect because Mali did not control the trans-Saharan trade routes. They also embraced the Islam influences, not repelled. And this last one's incorrect because they did not control the trans-Saharan slave trade as well. So they did control gold and salt resources, and that helped them to develop a lot of wealth. Russia built its empire by which of the following? The correct answer here is they had overland expansion. They moved eastward into Asia and Siberia and westward into Europe. So they had expansion. They expanded their empire. This first one's not correct because they had land-based expansion. They did not have a strong navy, not until the 20th century. Russia expanded and developed many strategies under their czars, so they did not remain isolated. And Russia was not actively seeking to convert Muslims to Christianity. This was not a part of what they were trying to do. Overland expansion is the way they built their empire. So that's the correct answer there. Which of the following was a result of the Ottoman Turks? The correct answer here would be all of the above. All of these things were a result of the rise of the Ottoman Turks. The Byzantine scholars did leave Constantinople and bring classical learning to Europe, especially Rome. At the height of the the Ottoman Empire stretched from Morocco to Anatolia to all the way to Persia, and they represented a serious threat to Europe for centuries as they controlled the Balkans. So they were a threat. They were able to conquer, and they brought classical learning with them as they expanded. The major influence in the European Renaissance. So we talked a little bit about the Renaissance this unit. Major influences were those scientific knowledge from the Islamic empires is the correct answer there. Scientific technology came from the Middle East during the Crusades and helped inspire the Renaissance. The following aren't correct. Cultural diversity in North America, not correct. America was interested and interesting to many of the Renaissance figures, but it didn't rely really on information from the Western civilization. European was pretty free and clear of that, so that was not correct. African music and culture did not have really any bearing on the Renaissance, and Christians came from Constantinople. They had influence on the Renaissance from classical texts, but not from their Christian faith. So they didn't really get a lot of information from this Greek Orthodox Church. So basically that scientific knowledge is what really influenced the Renaissance. This next question, slaves were originally brought to the Americas as part of the triangular trade in order to do all of the following except. So it's looking for what they were not there to do. Well, the correct answer here is this last one, work in textile factories. The reason why they were not brought over to work in textile factories is because those factories were developed during the Industrial Revolution. They weren't really present yet when the original slaves were brought over. But the slaves did, in fact, work on cotton plantations. They did work on sugar plantations, and they did work in the colonist's home. Not in textile factories at this time. Maybe perhaps later, but not during this time. In South America, how was the Inca Empire able to consolidate its power? So the correct answer here is going to be letter C, or the third one. They used their mastery of high altitude transportation to expand their empire. This first one's incorrect. They did not have the military technology, so it was not a primary reason to become large. They did not focus on mass conversion for a reason of building their empire, so they were not really worried about converting religious followers, and they didn't encourage migration to areas they controlled. That was not a part of it. They just built high altitude transportation, so up and over the mountains, that allowed them to build their power and expand. The power of the Catholic Church was diminished during the Reformation because of which of the following. So this would be from the Reformation era, and it's because of these discoveries of the scientific revolution. So the second one is the correct answer there. The first one isn't correct because there were some Catholic thinkers, and they spoke out about the atrocities committed to the indigenous people of America, but it was not really a central issue for the Europeans. The third one can't be correct because Islam did not have a significant presence in Western Europe at this time, so it really wasn't going to challenge the Catholic Church. And it's not going to be this last one because the Church encouraged the Crusades but was not responsible for them. The European failure to permanently control the Holy Land did not cause the Church to lose legitimacy. So really these scientific revolutions, the scientific revolution and the discoveries there were kind of diminishing that religious ideals during the Reformation. Which of the following best describes the motivation for the reformer, Martin Luther? So Martin Luther came along during the Reformation. He had issues with some of the things with the Catholic Church. So the correct answer is here. He wasn't happy with its teachings and its corruption. He felt that they shouldn't be selling sacred artifacts. So he really wanted to see some changes. So this is the correct answer. The first one would be incorrect. He was a Catholic monk. So that one is not that necessarily why he wanted to separate from the Catholic Church. This third one was he was not part of a political movement. So politics really didn't have anything to do with it. And he did want change, but he didn't want to overthrow the Pope or the papacy. So he wanted change, but it wasn't because of the Pope. It was because of some of the teachings and some of the corruption in the church. Which of the following led to the French Revolution? If you've ever seen the movie Les Miserables, this is a good one for you to watch to help remind you of this. But the French Revolution was caused mainly because of food shortages, heavy taxation of the peasants, and the Enlightenment thoughts that were there. They were very dissatisfied. Those peasants were dissatisfied with the heavy tax burdens. There weren't very good harvests during that time, so there were food shortages, which caused panics. And they were kind of looking at other revolutions, other places, and felt like this was maybe their only option. The rise of Napoleon was incorrect because he came to power after the French Revolution. So time-wise, this one would not be correct. The Congress of Vienna was a conference held after the initial defeat of Napoleon to determine the future of Europe. So this occurred after the French Revolution as well. So that's incorrect. And the reign of Louis XIV weakened the nobility and centralized power of the king, but his reign alone did not cause the revolution. He was long dead by the time it occurred. So this first one would be the correct answer there. During the 1884 Berlin Conference, European imperial powers did what? So the correct answer here is going to be it determined which parts of Africa would be controlled by which European powers. So remember, there was kind of a rush for colonizing parts of Africa. And so we want to take a look at this Berlin Conference. It would not be the Berlin Conference because this focused on Africa, not Chinese. So that's why this was incorrect. The apartheid system was not established until the early 20th century. So time-wise, that one is not correct. It's not possible. And the Triple Alliance was established by Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. So that would be incorrect here as well. The Meiji Restoration, what the answer there was, it was a period of modernization and westernization in Japan. That's the correct answer there. It can't be this first one because the Japanese abolished traditional institutions and began pursuing Western-style development, so it was not trying to restore them. It could not be this one because this occurred prior to the imperial incursions through Asia, so it wasn't an early stage there, so that would be incorrect. And this was the Meiji Restoration was considered a socio-economic movement, so it was not trying to return to cultural traditional practices. So this was a period of modernization. They were trying to westernize in Japan, more Western-like culture. Okay, according to Adam Smith, so now we're talking about free market economy. A free market economy would be this: a government that does not interfere with the economy. It's kind of a laissez-faire theory. The government kind of lets the market correct its own problems. It's just not going to get too involved. So it's not going to be this one. The owners are not, or the workers are not going to own part of the production. It's not going to be this one. Wages and private property are important elements of free market capitalism. And this last one, Lenin believed that dictatorship was necessary to maintain a communist society, but in a free market, the government does not work to maintain the economy. So this one, it's not going to interfere. For this next question, while the beginning of the Second War is usually understood to be Hitler's invasion of Poland, that's what a lot of people think of as the main cause. Some people talk about that it started even earlier. Which of the following events do some scholars identify as the beginning of World War II? So looking at these, many scholars think that when Japan invaded Manchuria, that actually started the World War II, or is one of the main deciding factors. It can't be this because the rape of Nanjing occurred before. The invasion of Manchuria occurred before the rape of Nanjing, so that was 1937. It can't be the Japanese takeover of Korea. Japan annexed Korea in 1910. And so this was before the First World War. So time-wise, that one's not correct. And the Chinese Civil War cannot be correct because it took place through the 1930s and after World War II. So it was not a cause of the Second World War. So time-wise, that one would be incorrect as well. Well, the beginning of the we just talked about that. Which of the following happened to Jewish people under the Nazi regime? So some of the things that the Jewish people suffered during World War II under the Nazis, it would be all of the above. They were, their homes and businesses were attacked. They were forced to live in ghettos and overcrowded neighborhoods with poor living conditions, and they were sent to concentration camps or murdered. So all of those terrible things, all unfortunately, a part of what happened to them during that time. Which of the following is an example of a cross-cultural comparison? So we're looking at something that crosses two different cultures. So our answer there would be that a Thai husband learns different holiday traditions from his wife who's Chinese. Those are the two different cultures, Thai and Chinese. So this one, students talking about a preference for sweets, no cultural involvement there. Students comparing prices of groceries in different cities, again, no cultural involvement there. And a career coach helps clients determine their goals, again, not talking about cross-cultural ideas. The intolerable acts featured which of the following? All of the following except. So let's take a look at that one. The Alien and Sedition Acts would be the one that was not a part of the intolerable acts. So for the first part, the Boston Porter Act, the Quartering Act, the Massachusetts Governing Act, all acts that the colonists felt were intolerable, or that they were having to put up with way more than they should have, and that the king was overstepping his grounds and making them take on all of these responsibilities without being given anything back. So for example, the Quartering Act, having to have British soldiers live with them, they felt was very intolerable. The Alien and Sedition Acts weren't a part of these intolerable acts. They were implemented during the John Adams administration, so not during this same time. The Boston Port Act was a major blow to the colonies. And then this last one, the Massachusetts Government Act, pushed the colonists by revoking the local control of Massachusetts. So basically telling the colonists they couldn't control their own, they couldn't control Massachusetts. What advantage did the colonists have over the British during the American Republic? Well, the Americans lived in America. So the answer here would be a strong leadership and knowledge of the terrain. This is the correct answer. They did not have financial wealth. They were not nearly as wealthy as Britain was. They did not have superior weaponry, and they did not have a professional military or access to mercenaries, but they had strong leadership under George Washington, and they had a really great knowledge of the terrain. They knew it very, very well. They'd been living there where Britain was coming, and their soldiers were fighting on terrain that they were not familiar with. I hope that this helps you. I know that studying for the praxis and passing that is a main goal of all of you in order to move forward in your education career, and we'll continue to do this throughout the course. Thanks much.